We've all been very comfortable talking among ourselves, so no problem at all. I said, I gave you permission to, if the choice was between not having the wine or waiting a few minutes, we could.
I would agree.
So, Lene, what year do you think we went on our Master Gardeners field trip to the?
I think we were there in maybe 17 or 18. I was going to say 18.
So would that have been about when you were maybe just starting to build your retail, your?
Let's see, we would have been in during 18, because we opened in May of 19.
Okay.
So that summer of 18 we started.
All right, well, I'm sure you're going to cover all of this, but just by way of introduction, I was thinking maybe in 2017, Lene and I were taking classes for Master Gardener, and one of our field trips was to come to your farm and you to hear about your vineyard and how you were establishing your vineyard, and you had a vision for what you were hoping your the Heaven Boutique Winery would become, and it's really grown since then. And so I'm excited to hear more about that. So let's welcome Carlton.
It is. My wife and I own Heaven Boutique Winery. We're out in Fayette. Ivy Road goes off of 150, goes back to the park. So we're the farm on the right there. So it was a family farm. My wife's mother was raised there. The family moved out of the farm in around 81. I think they tore the house down in 81. So it just sat there. They rent all the fields. When our children were little, we had a little pop-up camper, and instead of going to the parks, we would go out there, and we would put up the camper and we would camp. Well, then the kids got into soccer and swimming, and they didn't want to go camping anymore. And then they went away to college, and so they were lonely. So we had out on the farm, there was this little building. It was, the story goes that it was originally a chicken coop that was in the park. The family owned some property in the park. The state took it when they did the park, but so this, the story goes, it was a chicken coop. So the sidewalls were only about this tall. They brought it to the farm. They put it in a foundation, built a block wall, and sat that on top of it. And it was going to be a garage for the house. They never did any more with it. It had bare wall hanging in the middle of the ceiling. And then in 81, they tore the house down, but they left the garage up there. So being older, but younger than I am now, we decided, we got tired of putting up the camper and taking the camper down and put the camper. We said, my wife says, why don't you, I'll talk to my mom and see if she'll let us turn that into just a room, we'll put a floor in, and we can go out there and we can stay out there. I said, okay, that sounds fine. So the summer, I think it was Labor Day weekend in 2016 was when I went out there and started that thing. And we ran into, I'll just step back a little bit. The vineyard was already there. My wife's dad planted the vineyard in 2001, 2001. He had Eagles Landing in Marquette. So this is where they grew their grapes. So they would drive out an hour and a half, kill the vineyard, drive back, and would wait 2 days a week, 3 days a week. They did that all season long. When he passed away, her brother took over the winery and the vineyard. He did it for 1 year, said that's just crazy, so he bought some land closer to town. When I was out here working on this, he's out in the vineyard. I go out to talk to him, and what are you doing? He says, I'm killing all the vineyard. I'm going to pull all the vineyard out of here because if I don't take care of it, it just turns into a big bush. It's just a big mess. I'm just going to get rid of that. I said, well, just don't do that. Let me talk to your sister first. So talk to your sister, my wife, and she says, well, you're going to retire in a couple of years, so we can make the house a little nicer, the little garage a little nicer, and you can take care of the vineyard in the summer. And she was still working, and we can see each other back and forth, blah, blah, blah. I said, all right. So I said, talk to your mother. Her mother said, shit, that's fine. So we started doing that, and that's where it started. So it was just full of junk, me and the groundhog, fighting over who was gonna be in charge. I won. So we finally got him out of there. So it was all covered in metal siding. There were windows in there, but they had covered all those over. Well, there were openings, I should say. I couldn't do windows in. I lived in that in the summer, so it's a little teardrop camper, little kitchenette on the back. So I lived in that for the summer while I was building the thing and taking care of the vineyard some too. So it took like a whole summer messing with it because we weren't in any hurry to get out there. So we put in a concrete slab and insulated it and drywalled it and put a little kitchen. Since we were going to live there, we had like a full kitchen in there. That's a little utility room. And then we talked about doing the winery, and then we talked to the power company, and they said, oh, you got to upgrade all your service. So we're like, oh, here we go. So we had that done, and then winter came. And so that was like winter of 2017 maybe. So the vineyard just sits there. Then we started this in 18, early summer of 18, and we're building this was the commercial space. So this is the winery itself. And then winter came.
It's kind of like the seventh day.
Yeah, and the way we remembered it's Iowa, and the winter does come eventually. So, but it's even when some of the prettiest scenes are winter out there. There's nobody out there. The silence is scary. It's so quiet out there when it snows. You guys are all in that. It's just deathly silence. So silent. So when winter passes, the vines look like this. So this would be the time after the first hard freeze during the winter. You can start pruning anytime after the first hard freeze. The big vineyards will start pruning in February, March. They'll be out there in gloves and hats, and they'll be pruning because they have, they may have 100 acres of vineyards to prune. When we got out here, they were 3.5 acres of vineyard. Her brother took out 1, so left 2.5. I took out 1, left 1.5, because it's just me, and it'll take me 7 days of pruning just to get them cut back. So it's a lot of work. So just another row. That's all you need out there pruning. So when you prune these, you can see these things are. All right, she told me there's a place I can do a little red dot. So you may have one of these that runs from here, down to here, and when you prune it, you'll cut it off back here. And it seems wasteful, but to make them produce, you have to start getting rid of all the dead wood. So sometimes it's nothing more than a trunk and 2 lines going out, and at the end of the year, it's this gigantic bush that you have to try to find the berries in. So this is in good season. Once they get up, they'll just start hanging everywhere, growing, so you have to, they call raking it out. You pull all the vines off the wires that aren't attached and then tie them up. So you try to get them up higher to get the fruit up high so that you're not on the ground when you're looking for the fruit. So it started out as a low wire. When they first planted it, they pruned it so that all the grapes grew on the bottom wire. And that was kind of old school back in 2000. That's pretty much what everybody in the Midwest did. But they started thinking that's crazy, so I've retrained them to grow up to top wire, so that I still have some I haven't finished with, but so that you don't have to crawl around so much to find your grapes. And this we started building our house. The winery was opened. We opened in May of 2019. That summer, we started building our house. The whole 700 square feet. So it's tiny. It's only 2 of us took all summer, but in the meantime, we had the winery open. And that's Christmas there. And we do a lot of different things. We have classes, usually on the Wednesdays or Thursdays. This is the painting class. They were painting wine glasses. I think this one they were doing the seasons, the 4 seasons, so you got 4 glasses, came back 4 times. They've done other ones where they've painted artists on them, and the woman that does it, from Upper Iowa, she'll tell you the history. It's educational along with the painting skills that you learn. And we've done pottery classes. We've done some guitar lessons. So we're planning a bunch more of that stuff. I'll get into another space. So the original concept, when we started to do this, and my wife says we should open a winery. And I said, I don't want to be a winemaker. I don't really know anything about wine. So I wound up taking a year's course at Goodwin to learn how to make wine and take care of the vineyard. And she says, well, we'll do it. We'll be like a wine store. We'll carry other Iowa wines, and because people, you got to go from here to the Missouri River to buy some wines. So we'll buy them there, and we'll bring them, and people can taste those here without having to travel across the state. That was the concept. And it's worked well. We had about 25 different wineries, maybe 125 different wines. It's all Iowa wine, only with grapes that can grow in Iowa. Some of the wineries, including myself, will buy juice from New York or Pennsylvania, Ohio, but it has to be a grape that you could grow here. So we don't have any California style wines. And, some of the wineries do. We don't buy them. We don't sell them through the store, though. So that's it. That's when it's finished. So back to the vineyard. Once you get it pruned, then it's time to start treating fungus and mold and insects. And so pretty much you spray the vineyard every 10 to 14 days. You have to go out and spray for something. So I try not to spray as much as some of the big commercial wineries do. I think it's bad for the winery, for the environment. It costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time, and the quality of what we're getting out of there, I think is fine, because we don't really have our biggest thing is the Japanese beetles. You find it in one corner, and 2 days later they're eating 2 rows. So they're just crazy. So that's the thing we treat the most. Our birds. That's another story. So this is the winery. We make wine underneath the wine store in the lower level. So there's a garage door back where the picture's taken from. So we can make about 500 gallons of wine a season. That's our tanks. We only have about 500 gallons worth of tanks. And you get 5 bottles of wine from a gallon of juice, and you get a gallon of juice from like 13 pounds of grapes. So the vineyard will produce, last year we got 1.5 tons. We stopped picking. We used some Amish ladies who had been picking here since probably 2002, 2003, so they know it pretty well. But we stopped picking because we had so many grapes that it would have filled up every one of our tanks, and we wouldn't have been able to do but one kind of wine. So we stopped so we'd have some empty tanks that we could use. So we get, I think on ours for the market. So we have Marquette, Frontenac, and Concords. So we like to have some of those in barrels. The biggest one is the Marquette. We probably have almost 3/4 of an acre. So it probably produces 2.5 tons of grapes. So this year when I pruned back hard. I took off more than I normally do. And then this season I will go through, and I haven't done it in the past because it just seems wrong, is to go and cut clusters off. So if you have a brand or a leader and it has 5 bunches of grapes, you may go in and cut off 3. And so more energy is given to those grapes to produce those. I don't need all those grapes to begin with, so I'm going to try something new this year. See if it's any different. We also do, but we talked about winemaking, but I'll get to that. I don't want to jump ahead of myself too far. So the little blue tubes where we had planted, we had some vines that we lost. The vineyard's old. The vineyard's been there for more than 20 years. So I was suffering from trunk disease. It's probably been here for 30 or 40 years, but everyone is just becoming aware of it. When you take an old vine, and even the young vines now, cut it, you'll see the center will be brown, so it's killing it from the inside out. So these were over 20 years old, and it was, every one of them definitely had it. So I started, you'll get at the bottom, you'll get sprouts that come out. So you can take those and train those into new vines. So once I got so many of those, I cut the old trunks off. Some of them didn't have them, so we pulled them out and we planted new Marquette. So there's a vine in that tube, and you can water around that tube. It keeps the bugs out supposedly and keeps them warm as they're growing. So that's what's going on there. Just another picture of the vineyard. Probably 3 years ago, we had bees up at the top, so we did bees one year just to add to my workload. And first year was great. The second year, they were raided by another. I'm not really a beekeeper. I learn as I go. And one time I go out there and where did all my bees go? And somebody said, "Oh, you were raided. There was no honey. There was nothing. It was just empty." I'm like, I don't get it. They should have paid me for that.
Does a vineyard need bees?
No, they're self-pollinating, so they don't need bees or any insects for pollination. They're self-pollinating. Horses, they come out of the state park, so we have people riding out to the vineyard. This year, well, since we moved out there, we've been after the ranger to cut a trail closer, because they come out of the camping where the horse is, and they ride on the road, the shoulder. They redid all that road, and the ranger says that people just fly through there now because the road is so nice, and they just fly. So this year, he cut a new trail that comes out on 180, which is the gravel that kind of runs, I guess it's running north-south behind us. So he's cut a new trail. The family rents all the farm to a farmer, great guy, him and his son. And he also rents out of some land in the park. So he knows the ranger real well. And we saw him somewhere not too long ago, and he said, and he's told us we could do this before, but we just feel bad about it. But he said, cut a trail through my corn to the road, to the gate over there, so they can ride horses. And we're like, really? He said, yeah. 5 foot wide, just mow it down. Because he said the ranger said the trail will be ready, and they're going to tell everybody, if you're going to the winery, you got to take trail whatever and cut across the field. So that'd be interesting to see if we get more riders than we get a lot. That's a pretty good crowd there, but we get a lot, pretty good stream of them. So here are the grapes just before they start changing. Here we are putting nets on the vines. And My brother-in-law, bless his heart, he'll yank that out, throw it on the ground, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. She's worked so hard. Do it. I'm not a good farmer. So here they're putting nets on. They're nylon nets. They come in 1,000-foot rolls, and there's the machine on the back of the tractor. They just unroll it. Somebody, one down each side, pulls them down, and they call diapering it. They pull it down. It has a plastic pin. You clip it, and then when it's time to harvest, you got to take all that stuff up. We've changed that, of course. I'm always looking for something easier to do. So they make an avian bird spray that deters the birds. It seems to work okay. So, again, you have to spray it more than one time. I usually spray it and it rains the next day. So that's usually what happens to me. But birds are a problem because they love those grapes. You'll see them in there all the time. I do have a electronic bird squawker. My wife hates it. Maybe every minute and a half, 2 minutes. I don't even hear it anymore. It puts out distress calls from birds, like the bird's being eaten by a fox, whatever's got it, and it just screams bloody murder. You can hear it. We've had people down the road saying, I've always wondered what that was. So that works. I think it works for the first month, and then they're like, yeah, I don't know. It's just crazy. Ignore it. And they don't, they just go away. So here's the grapes just before time to harvest, when they get like that.
Those were the Marquettes?
Those are the Marquettes. Yep.
Were those bred specifically for Iowa?
Yes, those came out of, they were bred in Minnesota, at the University of Minnesota. The story goes, again, I have a lot of family stories. So when the University of Minnesota developed that grape, they were looking for a name for it, and they came up with Marquette. And then they realized that my father-in-law had his winery, his Eagles Landing, Marquette made, like the Indian maiden. And so they called him and said, we've got this grape, we've named it Marquette, we've already done some publications with the name Marquette. Is it okay to use it? He said, yeah, that's fine. He said, but I like 50 vines before you sell them. I want to be the first person to get them. They said, not a problem. So all those Marquettes were like the first ones to come out 25 years ago or whatever. That's the story. I don't know. I'm just going with it.
Believe the light. Sounds good.
It's a good story. I like it. So this grain bin was originally, it was on the farm when we got it. It's been there forever. State of Iowa, bless their heart. For the winery, originally, native wine, you could open a winery and sell native wine in Iowa for $25 a year. It was the cost of your license to make and sell wine in Iowa. Now, if you wanted to sell wine by the glass, you had to get a food license, and then $125 to do that, and inspection every year. I'm like, oh my goodness. Well, everybody wants a glass of wine, not necessarily a bottle of wine. So we did that, and then they come and they do their first inspection, and he's like, I see you only have one bathroom. Well, yeah, our license only requires, because we have 25 or less people, it only requires you to have one bathroom. It's a unisex. He said, yeah. He said, but if you do wine by the glass, you've got to have a his and a hers. And we were like, really? He's like, yeah. And we kind of shook our head, and he said, now, you can just put a porta potty out behind the barn. That'd be fine. I'm like, is that his or is that hers? You gotta make go out there. We can't do that. So we had this barn, this grain bin that we weren't doing anything with. And so we picked it up and we ran plumbing out and we ran electricity out. And so we put in 2 bathrooms in there, The little white things are drain tubs from Reno washers. They're just big white things. We use those for the sinks. And they said, oh, that was fine, except you have to have a sign. This one's for men and this one's for women. And we're like, it's got a lock on the door. It's one holder. It's not like, it's a gang toilet. That's the law. All right. So when we hear he's coming, we stick up the men. Other than that, we just leave it, let you go where you want. So there's a little tons in there. So we've done yoga out there. And a lady in Fayette has a yoga studio. She comes out and teaches classes, music. Last year we did music every Friday night. This year we're not. We're just going to randomly do music. We're finding I've gotten a lot older since last year, so we're gonna slow down just a little more. See what happens. So this is the winery downstairs. I have this teeny tiny little press. It'll do about 20 pounds, maybe 25 pounds at a time, and I'm doing 1,000 pounds. So it's a lot of loading and unloading. I found another one that's a bigger one. It's like this big, and I got a good deal on it. And I went out to pick it up, and I said, "Yeah, we're going to plug this in and see if it works." It didn't work. So I haven't gone back out to play with it. They said, "Just come out and figure it out." I'm like, "All right, I just haven't done that." So there's a lot in going into winemaking. You got yeast. So first thing you do, I don't know if we can see it in this picture. Back here, there's a crusher destemmer. So the grapes come in. We weigh a 5-gallon bucket. Every bucket that comes in, we weigh it, so we have some idea how much juice we'll have for our tanks. You throw them in there, and it has an auger, and it takes off the stems, crushes the grape, breaks the skin of the grapes, doesn't really crush them. And then you put them in your tank, and you add your yeast, so this is a nutrient that goes in, and then this goes into red grapes to help maintain the color of the grapes. This does the same thing, it's just a different product. And then potassium goes into it. So this is like a stabilizer in it, which is once the grape is fermented. So you put them in the tank. So primary fermentation, all the grapes, they're still whole. May have stems and leaves and everything in them. You put them in the tank. Throw in your yeast and all those things. You may add sugar if the bricks aren't high enough. So you want, the bricks is the sugar level in the grapes. So you want to be at least at 19. We're always at or above that. So I've never had to add sugar at that stage. And then about a week after that, it will start bubbling, starting to ferment, start giving off the gas. And the yeast is eating the sugar in the grapes and creating alcohol. Once that stops, that's when you would go back and put it through the crush or the press and separate the skins and the stems and everything from the juice. And then pretty much what you do from then on, it takes about 6 months for that juice to turn into, well, it's drinkable at that point. You wouldn't want to drink it, but you could drink it at that point. If we were in prison together, we could drink it. But normally, I mean, for commercial reasons, you leave it at least 6 months. We've had some that have been a year or so. But at least 6 months, and you, every 4 to 5 weeks, you test it to see how much free sulfur or potassium there is in that, or SO2 is in that. And so there's a certain level in their charts, and they have machines, and we test it, and it'll say you add so much, and you do that for 6 months. And then at the end, you have wine, some better than others. So yeast, there's probably, there are hundreds and hundreds of different yeast. And get the literature and you read it, and it tells you if you put this in, it's gonna taste like cherries. If you use this yeast, it's gonna give you, you know, a root beer flavor. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't know how the science, I don't know the science part of it, why those yeast would make those things taste like that. But they do, apparently. So, another nutrient, this one goes in during the fermentation process. Another yeast product. So, now we've got our wine in, so we've gone from juice to wine. Once we take it out of primary fermentation and put it in, it's, the yeast has stopped working, it's legally wine at that point. We don't have to pay taxes on it or anything, or report it to the state until we actually bottle it and label it to sell. So as long as it's sitting in tanks, I don't have to report it to the state. So, at this point, we have wine. So what we're doing, it's winter time, and we roll the tanks outside of the slab to cold stabilize them. So big wineries will have tanks that are jacketed, and they're running Freon or something through it, glycol, to bring the temperature down and hold it for, you know, a week or 2 weeks. I use Mother Nature. It's an economic thing. The problem with this is you don't know what you got when you get done. Was it cold enough, long enough? Was it the sun warm up too much?
What's the ideal temperature?
You want to get, 30, 32, or at least and below would be good. And I've had some years where it's been out there when it's 20 below. It doesn't freeze because it has so much alcohol in it. You can't do a glass carboy. It'll freeze enough to bust that. But these tanks, it just lifts the bladder inside. So it's kind of just put it out there and say, yeah, I think it's been cold enough. I'll just bring it in. So what you're trying to avoid is wine diamonds. You've seen a wine that looks like there's glass in the bottom of the bottle? No? Never seen those? You guys are rough. That's pretty typical in Iowa, that you'll find some wine that, you know, has the little diamonds in the bottom. That is from not cold stabilizing. So you have a bottle of wine, and you put it in the fridge, it gets cold, and then you bring it out where it's warm, and these crystals will fall out of the wine. They're not bad for you. You can drink them, eat them, put them on your salad. They're fine.
How many bottles do you think we'd have to try before
you find some? Come out to my place. I can probably find some for you. They say there's nothing in wine that'll hurt you, even if it's a bad wine. So if you see the diamonds, it's not as. The other thing you'll see is like a little cloud sometimes in wine, especially in a red, and that's from proteins. So it's not heat stable. So it's you've taken that. We've had people come back next year and say, look how cloudy this is. We're like, so what'd you do with it? I said, well, it's in the trunk of my car. So it gets, you know, if it overheats, then a thing that will fall out. So you'll have a cloud. So that's from not being heat stable. So when we make our wines and we bottle them, we will send ours to the Iowa State, to their wine lab. They'll test them and they'll tell you whether they're heat stable or cold stable. They'll give you what they taste. You know, oh, it's a cherry flavored, you know, chocolate. And I taste that, I'm like, I don't get it. And I've taken their classes too. And you're sitting in a room with all these people and they're tasting the wine, and people are going, oh, there's kind of a peppery taste. And I'm like, I don't get it. What is wrong? I've never smoked in my life. I can't taste a thing. So this, I thought I had a slide in between here. So this is the big grain bin that's out on the farm, been there forever, I suppose. And we're turning this into an art studio. So, because we were doing in the winery, we could only have like 12 people. So we've sprayed it, we had it sprayed, foam insulation, putting in the floor with electrical, heating and cooling,
So you're just putting the floor on top of the perforated floor in the
Yes.
middle?
I had many a discussion with myself about whether I should do that. So I said, well, in a house, in another life, I was an architect. So I said to myself, in a house, it's only 35 pounds a square foot in your house. That's the code requirement. But, each square foot has the whole 35 pounds. There's a bunch more to it than that, but like that. I wonder how much a cubic foot of corn makes. And so I looked it up. It was scary. And this is 17 feet tall. It's like 700 pounds a square foot or something. I'm like, yeah.
The floor is plenty strong now.
The floor is plenty strong. So I screwed down 2x4s through the metal, got some screws that would go through the metal and tried to pry one up and it was down there, so.
Well, you could use it for the heating and cooling.
I know, but I couldn't condense the heating and cooling out of crawl under there. He looked in there, it's like this much, corn and sticks and stuff, and he's like, nah. So we're just gonna blow it, open air, no duct, not working there. I don't have the other one. We have another grain bin. I'm surprised I don't have it in there. So we have another grain bin that's Airbnb. The little one that I showed you at the beginning, that's now Airbnb, so that's rented. We rent it during the season. We close it down in the winter time, but we rent that out as Airbnb. And then 3 summers ago, people across from us bought a farm that was sitting out there empty for 20 years. And they came over, and a young couple, we're talking to them, and they said, oh, we're gonna raise horses over there. I said, oh, that's great. And my wife said, well, then you're probably gonna use that grain then for feed and stuff. He said, no, I'm not gonna use it at all. You want it? I said, don't ask her. And she said, yeah, we'll take it. He said, it's yours, you have it. You move it, you can have it. So when we were moving the little one to put the bathrooms in, we built another slab with electrical and plumbing and all that mess. And so when they moved that, picked that one up and set it back on the new slab, they went over to the other farm. It happened to be on a Friday, and we were having music about 5 o'clock, and my wife looks out and she says, what are you doing? Well, let people park out there. I said, no, they can't park out there because they're gonna bring the grain bin. She's like, there, it's Friday night, they're not bringing the grain bin.
We were there the night.
We were there.
Were you there? And sure enough, here they come down there.
Oh, it was great entertainment watching.
It was,
that.
and everybody kind of just turned around and watched the grain bin. So that's an Airbnb. It has a loft in it. It has 2 full-size beds in the loft. It's cute. It's round. It's fun. So. Any questions? I didn't really get too much into that. I hated to turn it into a big commercial for it, but.
Do you want to, so you, how many of your own wines are you making and selling?
So, originally, like I said, the business plan was to do everybody else's, and then this past winter, as we're sitting around, we changed the business plan. So we're gonna start producing more of our own. So right now, we have 4, then I have 2 more that I'm making. So we'll have maybe 8 coming this year. So we're going to start weaning ourselves of everybody else in the state because most of them we have to go get. So, I gotta drive to almost Omaha, pick up wine, or down to Missouri or wherever it is to get wine. So we're gonna start weaning ourselves off of those guys and making more of our own. So, like I said, like a lot of miners, we're buying juice from New York or Ohio or someplace.
Here, we've got
We have some,
Is that your rule that you?
that's our rule.
That's not an Iowa thing?
No,
Okay.
no, that was our rule that we wanted just Iowa wines. And
But that was your standard.
That's ours, yeah. So, yeah, a lot of the big wineries will get juice from California. They'll be making California style wines. We don't. Like I said, I didn't really want to be a winery. I got pushed into it. So, but it's fun, it's good education.
Are these two of your, so these that you brought?
So these are, yeah, so
Would be your best.
Love is Love, the one in your left hand, that is a Concord, it's a sweet Concord.
So is this the pouring will stop like at a sample?
Yeah, just pour it and then it'll stop.
I don't have much experience, but I've seen it done.
You may have to go work there this summer.
Oh,
Yeah, let's figure it out.
Oh, I guess
That's fine.
obviously,
Right, we'll
like,
take
can
one
I
back.
use
You're
that
fine.
for my, it's like corn communion wine.
Yeah, the quicker you do it, the
It's an
less.
educational.
Quicker.
Settle down, it's pretty small.
Oh, man.
Some of those hops are,
You
you
better
might have
at
to push
Carlton
the
than
hop
me.
back in.
Are you better at it than me?
Make sure those things
Thank you.
Done for me.
are. Of you? Did you get something there?
I didn't yet,
Smells nice, so sweet.
So this is Concord, so it's some of ours and then some juice. Because we don't really, we probably have a dozen vines of Concord. And last year, a year before last, we weren't gonna do any Concord. And the young ladies that came and did the picking for us, we gave all the Concords to them and they made it.
Well, I was gonna ask, do you sell the extra then?
The grapes.
Yeah?
We haven't, we will.
Yeah, right, she makes a delicious grape pie.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah.
So we harvest, generally, it's Labor Day weekend.
West Coast. West Coast.
Yes.
High.
so that's Love is Love.
So that's what it's
Yeah.
like.
Is that your,
Great.
how many wines do you guys do?
We have, let me think, we have
Long time now.
3, 4, we have 5. Love is Love, got
So, we did the.
silver out of the Great American Winery, International Winery, like in Cincinnati or somewhere. This one just won silver at the Texas International. So this is a raspberry when anybody's ready.
Sure.
So this
So
is-
now you're driving around the country with your wines?
No, we ship, we just,
You just ship them down?
yeah, we just ship them. They'll take, they charge you so much and then they want so many bottles.
Or two?
I do.
But then they give you the free advertising if you win, and,
Then they send you a nice little cute medal.
uh-huh,
Thank you.
and then you can boast about that.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, you're just making me feel better.
Well, these things, I haven't convinced my wife yet, they only have a short or a limited lifespan and should buy new ones. So,
What's the, of the wines that you guys make yourself, Carlton, what's the per bottle price?
everything's around 15. Yep.
Yeah. Like the 60 ounce. That's what it takes that many for spring.
You still sell the slush mix?
We do, we still have the slush mix.
Very good.
Yeah.
Do you put that together?
This is, yes, we got a formula, like everything else online. We started out buying it from the people that sell you the machines, but when you start looking into it, it stopped.
That's a surprise.
And that was the bonus.
Sure.
Oh,
that's all right.
one Yeah, so we do that. So,
So much of it is
That raspberry
So they
flavor.
can grow different grapes.
Yeah.
Kind of like
Good
Napa
too.
Valley.
Yeah.
any questions about growing grapes or
And just up there.
those things are hardy, they'll live through?
So are you glad you went and took the winemaking class and are making wine now?
I took a class twice. Well, I used to work, after I retired from being an architect, and I had a construction company. And then Lisa got tired of seeing me sitting around the house. She said, you need to find another job. So I wound up getting a job with Kirkwood and in their continuing education. So I was a programmer for their industrial technology. So we did anything that had to do with construction. I helped create class, hired instructors, managed the classes, curriculum, and all that kind of stuff.
Like CAD class?
CAD, yeah, welding, auto mechanics, anything, all those things. Anything you had to get your hands dirty or mine.
How long ago was that?
2018, I retired. So I was there for 10 years. And they had their wine, they had planted a vineyard, and this young man, Lucas, was the instructor, and I got to take him off for free, and I said, well, I'll just go take the class. Well, come to find out, walk into class every day, we meet once a week, I can't remember, I think it was about once a week. But he always had 3 bottles of wine, so we always got to taste and drink wine during class. I'm like, what? And it was free, so next time it came around,
That's
I
why you
took
took
it
a class,
again.
yeah.
But it was informative, and then, you know, it was really kind of, it got you through, because we managed a vineyard, one class was vineyard management, so we talked about growing grapes and pruning and all that kind of mess, and then went through during the winter, we did the making wine class. It was all pretty necessary, but not really very sophisticated. I mean, it wasn't in depth. So, you know, he talked about the yeast, but you didn't get to like try something different, because we were making wine for the college to sell. So there were formulas, and we had to stick to those things because they
Had to be consistent.
had to be consistent. And he would do some fun things. So, I mean, we made champagne. And a lot of people in Iowa, probably around the country, will make champagne, but they'll inject the carbonation. We actually did it the way the French do it, and, you know, freeze them and pop the top and get the ice out and put more yeast in and put another, did the whole, you know, put the wire on them, and they were actually good. I did enjoy those. So they didn't sell those in the school, but.
Well, you can't call it champagne
No,
unless it's
no,
France.
yeah, it's like bubbly
Yeah.
wine or something,
Yeah.
you couldn't call it champagne. But that was fun. I've learned a lot more on my own by making mistakes. So one year, the potassium metasulfate, that you test your wine and have a little machine. And you add some chemicals, and you stick it on, and the little machine will beep at you when it's ready. And it beeped at me and told me to add so much. I added it. Next time I tested it, it said there was none in there. I'm like, my God, did it again, none in there. So I called Iowa State, and I said, okay, here's what I got. This is what I'm doing, and it's not working. They're like, okay, we'll just ask you, first we ask you all the dumb questions. I'm like, okay, so how old is the stuff you have? And I said, well, it's not old, because they say 6 months. I said, no, it might be getting close, but it's not there. And they said, well, what about your machine? Is it calibrated? I said, no, I'll just throw in what I did. My brother-in-law was the winemaker at Eagles Landing in Marquette. I said, I took it there and did it on his machine. Same thing, it's not right. They said, all right. Okay, so when you put it in there, do you stir it up? And I said, yes, I have a big stainless steel paddle, and I stir it completely like I'm supposed to. They said, well, let us call you back. I'm like, all right, you know. A couple hours later, they called me back, and they said, all right, here's the consensus. So test it. If it tells you to add, you know, 20 grams and 40. All right. And there's a limit. You can only have, like, federal government only gives you a certain maximum of anything you put in wine. There's a limit to how much you can put in there. They said, "Are you at that limit?" I said, "I don't even know how to test to see if I'm at that limit. What are you asking me for?" And they said, "Oh, you're fine." I said, "Okay." So I put in 40. And they said, "Now call us back tomorrow. You test it again." Call them back. Nothing. All right. Put in 40 more. Oh, this is going to be terrible. And eventually, it got there. And I said, "Well, what was that all about?" They said, "We have no idea." I'm like, "Okay. Well, I feel a lot more comfortable now that you guys don't know."
Well, does it vary based on the year you grow the grapes?
That will have to do with it, whether it's a wet year or a dry year, you know, a lot of things. They actually liked this past year. It was hot and dry. Loved it. Had more,
The grapes like that?
yeah, I had more grapes than I could do anything with. They like it hot and dry. People like them. You only water them, irrigate when they're in the first year. After that, you don't have to irrigate them anymore.
So they're pretty drought resistant?
And their roots, the main roots go like straight down. So,
All three different,
yeah, almost everything in the Midwest has, they'll have the ones close to the surface, but the main root will go down pretty much. And the farm out there, you know, have posts that I have to replace. It seems like every year I'm replacing 30 posts. And I just have this little one-man post hole digger, and it'll go down maybe 30 inches. And go down as far as it'll go, pull it out, sit it down, look back in, and hold it along with water. What the heck? So, I'm like, I'm not worried. And it'd be middle of the summer to do that. Doesn't seem to matter. So I know there's plenty of groundwater out there.
Yeah.
So they must be fine. So, yep. And if anybody has a cure for Japanese beetles, I'm always open for those things. They were late this year, this past year. We usually get them like middle of June. This year they were limited to July. So we used to call them June bugs. I'm from Virginia originally. You can't tell by my accent. And as a kid, we used to catch them, tie a string to the leg, fly around. I tell my
That's your
kids.
entertainment, huh?
Oh, I told my kids that. They're like, "Dad, that's cruel. You can't do that." Like it's a bug, man.
Carlton, what's the best way to know, like, what your activities and your music and things to follow your Facebook page or your website?
Yeah, the website, or Facebook, should be on Facebook. Like I said, last year we did music every Friday. This year, right now, we're doing, it's gonna be kind of a pop-up kind of thing. We're doing Labor Day, Memorial Day, and then I'm not sure when during the summer, Bo Timmerman's gonna be out a couple times, so.
And you'll have food trucks when you have music, or?
Yeah, we'll have a food truck on those Fridays.
Do you have do you always have your pizza oven whenever you're open? Is that just on the
We are
weekends?
not doing pizza anymore.
You're not, okay.
No, sorry, bit the dust. So, it was very time consuming. It was delicious,
Yeah,
but it was very time consuming.
yeah.
So, I'm trying to slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah, not working.
Well, it's really beautiful. It's just a beautiful spot to sit and look over the countryside, and it's really a nice addition to our county, and encourage everybody, if you haven't been there yet, to make
Yep,
sure
come out.
you
We're open,
come out.
we open Labor Day weekend. So the Thursday before, I guess, Labor Day weekend, 23rd.
Memorial Day.
I'm sorry.
And then-
It would be a nice summer for me. I'd probably be divorced.
Are there days that you aren't open? Do you have closed days?
We do, I know, like the first weekend in June, we're gonna be closed.
Just on a regular basis, like are you closed Mondays, or are you?
Oh,
open?
yeah, regular week, we're closed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. So noon to sunset, except on Sundays, it's noon to 5. We learned quick the first year when we used to close at 5 o'clock. First year, we opened at noon, and we closed at 5. about the third day, somebody said, you know, we all get off work at 5, it's hard to be here. We're like, oh, I never thought about that. So we changed our hours.
Yeah, good.
So it's
Yeah.
like, you can only drive so fast.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
I'm sure I'll, as soon as I get out on the road, I'll,
Yeah, well, this is, thank you so much, it's really great.
you're all welcome to come out to the vineyard. Labor Day, like I said, Labor Day weekend, we're pruning, or we're harvesting. Anybody wants to come out and take grapes?
All right.
And then if you have questions about winemaking, come down. We've always talked about, because we're doing more artsy crafts kind of stuff in the studio. And one thing we've talked about, tossed around, if there would be an interest in like actually a winemaking class where you're gonna bring a 5-gallon jug of wine, you know, so buy your juice or use our grapes or whatever, and then make it, we'll make it there and watch it for you, and then you can just come out and bottle and all that stuff. Don't know if it's a real thing, we know. Probably just be me out there talking to
Part of
myself.
the new business plan.
Part of the news. I haven't mentioned that one to Lisa yet, because she'll put it on the list. I'll
Be
be
careful
sorry.
what you say.
Yeah, gotta be careful.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, come on out, you know, visit us anytime. We'll show you around, take you to the winery.
Thanks for the samples, too.
Yeah, that
Oh,
was
yeah.
really generous of
Well,
you.
there's some more left, so.
Yeah. Especially having to go, make 2 round trips to get it here for us. We
Yeah.
really-
Well, and then, of course, when I'm coming out, Lisa's going in, she had she's on the council or something in Fayette, and she said, what are you doing? I said, well, I forgot why. She said, you should have called me. I'm like, of course I should have. But I was in the panic mode.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was worth the wait.
Yeah.
Very good, yeah.
Well, thanks for coming.